think that we'll go ahead and get started as more people are coming in. Well, thank you everybody so much for coming today. We're really excited to share more about law school, the process of applying, what to consider, all of that kind of information. And we're so happy that you're joining us. I'm going to take a quick moment to introduce myself and the National LGBTQ plus Bar, and then I'll kick it off to our wonderful panel to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the meat of the programming. My name is Mari Nemec. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as advocacy counsel here at the National LGBTQ plus Bar. My work involves addressing issues of accessibility and equity within the legal profession and legal systems, but a lot of my work also revolves around working with law students. So if you do end up pursuing law school, I'm sure that you will be hearing from me. So I'm glad to put a face to the name before that happens. And the National LGBTQ plus Bar Association and Foundation are a nationwide network of legal professionals and affiliated organizations dedicated to promoting justice and equity for the diverse LGBTQ plus community through advocacy, education, and collaboration within the legal profession. We have programming and resources for prospective law students, incoming law students, current law students, and legal professionals, and we're here to support you every step of the way if you do end up deciding to pursue a career in law. I also really want to highlight that this fall, we're planning on holding an educational series for prospective law students that will more deeply address the issues that we're going to discuss today. So if you're looking for more on these topics, stay tuned. I'll probably be reaching out to folks towards the end of the summer and the beginning of the 2026-2027 school year. So if you're interested, please join us again in the fall. I also want to let you know that we'll have time for question and answer, hopefully at the end. So if you do have any questions as we're discussing topics throughout the webinar, feel free to use the question and answer function, and we'll get to those towards the end. If there's any questions that we're not able to answer, I'll follow up with you via email. You also all, I believe, have my email. If not, I'll reach out to you after this webinar, and you're very welcome to email me afterwards with any questions that you might have. And with that, I will turn it over to our panel to introduce themselves. How about we start with Professor Carpenter?
Hi, I'm Professor Lee Carpenter. I am a professor at Rutgers University School of Law Camden campus. I've been a professor since about 2008, and before that I was an LGBTQ rights attorney working mainly in Philadelphia. So welcome.
Thank you. And maybe we'll go over to Eric next, and then from there we can just popcorn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Stern. I'm the Assistant Dean for Career Development at UC Berkeley School of Law. And I've been working in law school career services for the last 20 years. Before that, I was a public interest attorney in Washington, D.C., and had a career in national politics, working as the DNC's Director of LGBT Outreach. I was a staffer on 3 presidential campaigns, and then I ran a small political nonprofit. And I'm so happy to be here with you today. I have been involved with the bar and lavender law since I was a law student, and then as an employer, and now in my current capacity advising law students.
I'll go, if that's okay. I'll just popcorn in here. Hello, everyone. Good day. My name is Jay Austin. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the founder and executive inaugural director of Rise Alliance at LSAC, which is a center devoted to student-facing professionals. But before that, I've spent almost 40 years in law school admissions, being the chief admissions officer, dean of admissions at 5 law schools and 1 law school overseas in Azerbaijan. On my side hustle, because that's also important in my life, I was the board chair of TILDEF, which is a Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, and subsequently has merged with the NCTE, the National Center for Trans Equality, into A4TE, Advocates for Trans Equality. And I continue to be the board chair of A4TE, which is I'm just gonna make a plug for that. It's the largest trans-led organization in the country with 50 employees and a budget of $8 million. So with that, I'll pass it to my colleague, Bekah.
Thanks so much, Jay, and thanks, Mari, and my fabulous co-panelists, and of course, the National LGBTQ Bar Association for putting together this terrific panel. My name is Bekah Saidman-Krauss. I use she and her pronouns. And just to share a little bit about my background, I have worked in law school administration for about 13 years. Prior to that, I was in private practice in Philadelphia. My experience in law school administration includes over a decade of overseeing the admissions and financial aid operation at Penn State Dickinson Law. A couple years ago, I transitioned to a new role at Penn State Dickinson Law, where I oversee the Career Services Office and the Academic and Student Services Office at our singly accredited law school with 2 locations.
Well, thank you all so much for being here again. We have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so excited to dig into the topics that we're going to cover today. And I say we jump right in with, I think, one of the biggest considerations that prospective law students are having to weigh when they're deciding whether or not to go to law school, which is the financial aspect of it all, both in terms of applying to law school and then also how you cover the cost of attending law school. And so, Bekah, I was hoping that you could start us off with some suggestions of things to consider, ways to address concerns about funding law school and fees around applying to law school.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. And this is such a great first question because it's on so many people's minds, especially with all of the changes happening at the federal level. So let's just dig right in and talk about those initial costs, right? When you're kind of preparing for studying for the LSAT, starting to think about what schools you're going to be applying to. There are several costs. They may be somewhat insignificant, but again, small costs do add up. So it's important to be thinking about the various costs involved with applying to law school. And some of those might include, think about how you plan to study for the test, right? Are you going to be doing self-study? Will you need to purchase preparation materials? Are you planning to hire a private tutor or take a commercial class, right? Or use some of the resources provided that I know at least one of my colleagues will be talking about later, Law Hub. So think about some of those costs, and they'll differ depending on how you study best and how you think you'll be able to best prepare for that test. And then, of course, when you're ready to sit for the test, there's also the registration fee to take the LSAT. And of course, some law schools do accept other tests, and frankly, all of them do have a registration fee. So regardless of which test you take, there will be a fee associated with that. When you do apply to law schools, you'll also have to pay a credential assembly service fee. This is a terrific service that the Law School Admissions Council provides. I remember when I was applying to law school, I had to, handwrite the envelopes and mail them to each separate school with your official transcript and a printout of your application. Now, the Law School Admissions Council really has consolidated the process, makes it very easy to send your single transcript to LSAC to be verified. They distribute it to the other schools, right? We'll get into some of this a little bit later, but there is a fee associated with that service that they provide. And then, of course, the individual school applications that you submit, most schools do have application fees. Now, that's the starting point, but it doesn't mean you should be deterred by those costs. Some of these costs may be reduced or waived. So, for example, the Law School Admissions Council does provide need-based waivers to qualifying individuals, and some schools may also provide need-based waivers or simply waivers as incentives they'll waive their application fee as an incentive for you to apply. So moving on to the costs associated with attending law school, there are a whole slew of other costs involved, most of which are included in what we call the cost of attendance, which include tuition, fees, textbooks, as well as living expenses. And schools are required to publish the cost of attendance on their websites. And so that's a really great starting point for you to use when trying to get a sense of what your estimated reasonable costs might be during the academic year at a given institution. And I just want to harp on what I just said, the academic year. So the cost of attendance is a 9-month budget. You'll want to keep that in mind when doing your budgeting and when comparing offers, right? So understanding the cost of attendance is really important so that you can compare if you receive now we're going to talk about ways to cover those costs, right? You might be excited to receive a scholarship or a grant, right? So these are some ways that can help reduce your out-of-pocket costs. So students typically cover the cost of attendance through grants, and those can be either institutional, or external. Loans, right? So that's money that you borrow, and that can either be through federal loans, federal education loans, or private loans, which are becoming increasingly necessary for some folks in this current environment, or funds from your income or savings. So that is a sort of broad strokes overview of some of the costs to consider, as well as how to cover those costs, right? Don't be deterred by the sticker price. Take advantage of potential grants and determine your eligibility for external awards. And then I will share also a resource from Access Lex that is a student loan calculator that may be helpful. I can share that in the chat as well.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And that was so much helpful information. I know it was a lot of information too. And like I said, students, you're very welcome, or prospective students, you're very welcome to reach out to me. I'll provide information to everybody attending this. I think a great place to look for some scholarship opportunities also is on the LGBTQ plus bars website. We have a whole page that's scholarships available to LGBTQ plus and ally law students. So that's something to look at too, to get some ideas of different ways to fund a legal education as you're considering all of these costs. I think another thing that often really comes to the front of mind for prospective law students is figuring out how to pick a law school that will be affirming and safe to attend as an LGBTQ plus person or as an ally, especially in the current environment. It's a question that's asked to me a lot. How do you pick a law school? So I'm just curious if folks on the panel have insights into some things to consider when you're deciding which schools to apply to in the future. Whether law school is going to be an environment that you'll be comfortable in as an LGBTQ plus person. Jay, do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, happy to jump in here. Thank you so much for everyone who's here, and for Bekah kind of setting us up with beginning how to finance it. That's a great question. And as someone who's been around a long time, I might say it has shifted a little bit, right? For a whole host of reasons that we all know, as the landscape has changed. But nonetheless, there is a great tool that LSAC provides. It's called the LGBT school survey. And, in partnership with the Bar Association, we've conducted a survey where schools are able to submit information to about a whole host of things, everything from what organizations are on campus, what are there any out faculty members, what are the policies, the procedures of the university or the law school itself. When I think of policies, I think of things like, are you able to use your chosen name? Are you able to use your pronouns? What might be in terms of healthcare and access to you? So that's a great resource, and I'll drop that in the chat too as a survey, but it's available to you on the LSAC website under Access and Community Programs. But it's a survey that we do. And again, what's interesting about that as well is that many schools continue to provide data on that. But honestly, there are schools who no longer can provide data regarding LGBT students on their law schools. So that's something to be mindful of as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to pop in for this question?
Yeah. So I think that one of the things to remember is that law school tends to be a little bit different than undergrad, right? In that for most people, most of the time, the law school that you go to will be located in the region where you're probably going to practice law. That's less true for like the very, very top schools where people come from all over the country and maybe they get dispersed across the country. But the vast majority of law schools tend to create lawyers who work at somewhere in the general region where the law school is. It tends to be how it works out for several reasons. One of which is that you are meeting people who are going to become your professional network. They're going to be your colleagues. They're going to be your opposing counsel. They're going to be, you're going to meet people who will become judges, right? People who will help you get jobs. So there are a lot of reasons why where you go to law school geographically may matter a lot and may matter more to you than where you went to undergrad. For that reason, I think it's important to think about climate beyond just the law school itself, right? And the question is, right, does the law school devote resources to, LGBTQ issues? Does it have an outlaw group, right? Does it have a dean of students who's able to talk comfortably about LGBTQ issues? Does it seem to have a lot of other kinds of diversity? Those things are really important, but I think that's something that is becoming perhaps increasingly important in this very polarized political environment is where geographically is the law school located? Is it located in a place where the state government is going to be, putting tremendous pressure on the institution to be less friendly, less accommodating, right? Where it's going to, where the state government is going to want to destroy diversity-related programming at that law school. It isn't located in a state that is not safe for people who may become pregnant. So those are questions that I think in this political environment, it's very important to ask yourself, probably more so than 20 years ago.
That's so helpful. And I think a really great point to raise. Something that I would also recommend is you're very welcome to reach out to outlaw groups, pride law groups on campuses that you're interested in. And those students can be really helpful in giving you a realistic understanding of what it's like both on campus and in that state, in that city, in that region, what it's like to navigate various issues as a queer person. And that can be a really helpful insight. Bekah, I saw that you unmuted too for this question. Do you have anything to add?
I would also add, follow the school on social media, visit their website, see who they're profiling, see what articles they're featuring, which professors they're highlighting, right? And which student orgs they're featuring on their social media accounts. It's a great way to, I think, get a sense of the culture of a particular school. And I'll also add, and this kind of goes back to the financial considerations, if at all possible, visit in person, right? That's a great way to engage in some of that inquiry that Professor Carpenter mentioned, that Jay was talking about. Ask some of those questions directly to the students, to the dean of students, the president of the organizations that you're, the president of Outlaw.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice too. And I think is kind of connected a bit to the next topic we want to cover, which is what is law school actually like? And I think visiting a school or reaching out to students there is a really great way to learn about that. Because I think especially if you don't have family in the legal profession, if you don't know a lot about the legal profession, but you're interested in it, it might be that most of what you know comes from movies like Legally Blonde, which has some great insights into law school, but it's also very different than what it's like to attend law school in 2026 or, looking to the future, 2028, 2029. So Professor Carpenter, I was curious if you could share a little bit more about what is it like to be in law school?
It's exactly like Legally Blonde. I mean, it's pretty much that was a documentary. So just, give it a look. Now, I think law school is a weird place. I don't think anybody's ever gone to law school and been like, that felt like everything else I've ever done. It's got a very unique culture. And it's very different from undergrad in a lot of ways, probably too many ways to list in one webinar. But I'll say that it's very challenging in that there's a voluminous amount of reading to do. I was not able to get away with bad study habits the way that I was in undergrad. Like you actually have to do a lot of work. You have to learn to manage your time. You have to really put as much of your attention and focus on law school as you possibly can. If you have to work while you're going to law school, you may want to consider a part-time program, of which there are many, because the focus is so intense. So that's the first thing, right? Like I was not able to do the skating through the way that I was in undergrad, and no one can. It just, the work is too intense. It's too complicated. It's very challenging. But that's also what is great about it, right? I mean, if you want to be intellectually challenged, if you want to have a career where you're constantly being challenged and learning new things, it's a wonderful experience. One of the things that's different about law school is that the first year is almost always very regimented in the sense that you don't really get to pick what classes you take. That's the classic law school first year experience. You just it's a lot like high school in that you're put with a cohort of people who you may or may not have anything in common with. You go to all of your classes with those people, or most of your classes with those people, and you don't get a lot of choice in terms of what classes you take. And the learning curve in the first year is practically vertical. So that's really, I think, where people feel the most challenged, both intellectually and also emotionally, right? That's a weird experience. Like I said, it feels more like high school than it does like, you're the last half of college. You're not getting to pick your classes. You're not getting to really pick your friends. You're sort of stuck with these people, some of whom you may love. Some of you whom you may have nothing in common with. And then as you progress through law school and you pass through that kind of initial period, you get almost infinite choice as to what classes to take. So it really goes from like no electives to all electives in most institutions at a weirdly dizzying speed, right? So at that point, you start to take classes in areas where you have more interest. You start to have more experiential learning experiences with, you'll go to do clinics where you're actually representing clients with supervision, externships, summer jobs. So you sort of move from entirely theoretical, learning the basics, through taking more elective courses to taking experiential courses, and then you graduate. And then you have to start worrying immediately about taking the bar exam wherever you plan on practicing. So that's the very, very, very short, what is law school like?
Thank you. That was a great overview. I think also I graduated law school in 2022, so not too long ago. And something that I was very surprised by with law school is how much it felt almost like a trade school, whereas in college, everyone is pursuing different degrees, maybe everybody is getting their bachelor's, but in different subject areas, taking very different classes, interested in very different careers. Whereas with law school, it's very focused on the practice of law in a way that I don't know how I wasn't expecting looking back, but it was surprising to me how focused everything really was on preparing you to practice law in whatever way you want to practice it. So that's something that I would add too for folks listening, is that it really is a very focused setting, but that can be really exciting because you're around other people who have similar passions and interests. You're really focused on the career that you're building, and you have lots of experts around you, both your professors, but also folks working in the law school administration who are really there to help you prepare for your career and to place you in that career. So that's a really cool environment as well. Does anybody else have anything to add about what it's like to be in law school, things that maybe surprised you, that you liked, that you think prospective students should know as they consider it? All right, if not, I'll head to the next question, which is about kind of what you do after law school. There, I think, are a million different things you can do with a law degree, but I'll let Eric lead us with this conversation on what you can do with a law degree, both, kind of the traditional path and all the other ways that you can use a JD.
Yeah, thank you, Mari. It's true. A legal education really does open up so many exciting professional opportunities. I'm going to talk about some of the most popular legal career pathways today. And those categories are public interest and public sector careers, private sector careers, and judicial clerkships. So when we say public interest employers, we're referring to nonprofit organizations that are doing legal work. And within the public interest sector, there's a lot of diversity and variety in how the attorneys practice and in what practice areas they work. I think what's true is that public interest lawyers wear a lot of different hats. Public interest includes a wide range of practice areas: environmental, immigration, housing, education law, consumer justice, civil rights, criminal justice, public defense, and those are only a few. And at a broad level, the work of public interest attorneys fits into three different categories. There's direct legal service, where attorneys are helping clients resolve their specific legal issues by providing direct legal support or representation. An example of this would be helping somebody appeal the denial of public benefits or defend against an eviction. The work of public defenders also falls into this category. The second category is impact litigation. This is where attorneys strategically use the court system and its processes to bring broader changes in the law to resolve disputes. An example might be where advocates are challenging a county policy as being unconstitutional or unlawful. And the third public interest lawyering category is policy advocacy, where attorneys are using their legal expertise to influence public policy for the benefit of vulnerable communities. These are very broad buckets, and you can find each of these functions in almost any issue area, serving almost any type of client. Some nonprofits and their attorneys engage in all three of these areas: impact litigation, direct services, and policy advocacy. When we talk about the public sector, we're talking about work done at government agencies. That's local, state, federal, or tribal levels. And again, within government work, there's a large range of practice areas that attorneys can work in. And what attorneys do in the public sector differs considerably based on the roles and the responsibilities they have. So let's talk now about the private sector, and I'll start with law firms, since this is the most common type of private sector employer. Law firms are groups of attorneys who choose to work together to serve clients, helping them solve business problems through negotiations, as well as through lawsuits, either as a plaintiff or a defendant. Law firms are businesses themselves, and they typically serve other business clients. You will hear the term big law a lot to refer to large law firms with over 500 attorneys. These firms represent wealthy private and public companies or very high net worth individuals. They have attorneys that practice many types of law. Some of these firms refer to themselves as full service, meaning that a client could have all of their legal problems addressed by one law firm. Law firm practice areas are generally grouped into 4 categories: litigation, where a company is sued or sues another; transactional, which is the business planning side of law; corporate, mergers and acquisitions; tax, bankruptcy, real estate; regulatory work for businesses that have to comply with government regulations; and intellectual property, which involves patents, trademarks, and copyrights in business issues that are related to technology, manufacturing, and advertising. Attorneys at plaintiff side firms represent the plaintiff suing a company. They are 100% litigation based, and their attorneys are excited about going to trial. This is in contrast to big law litigation cases, which typically settle before going to trial. Clients at plaintiff side firms may be individuals who have been harmed, like in a personal injury or employment law case, or a class action. Group of people who have been harmed, think consumer class actions, large tort cases, or civil rights claims, like police brutality cases. Some plaintiff side firms represent labor unions and workers. And the final private sector category is in-house. These are attorneys who are employed by a company. Some companies only have one attorney, and some larger companies like Microsoft have over 1,500 attorneys. In-house attorneys serve the best interest of the company, so you only have one client, and you are managing the day-to-day work of the attorneys at law firms the companies hires. Finally, let's talk about judicial clerkships. These are some of the most sought-after postgraduate jobs for law students nationwide. Judicial clerkships offer opportunities to work in a judge's chambers, observe litigation and trial work in action, and gain a front row seat to how judges decide cases. If you work with a judge during law school, we call these judicial externships. Clerkships are full-time postgraduate positions that last 1 to 2 years. Most judges have between 2 to 4 law clerks. Some people clerk immediately after law school, and others clerk after spending a few years in practice. Many judges in federal, state, and specialty courts throughout the country hire judicial externs. and judicial externs are typically supervised by the judge's full-time law clerks. The role of clerks and externs is to help a judge manage their docket, review the parties' filings, research and summarize the law for the judge, draft opinions and other recommendations, and work with the judge to come to the right conclusion under the law. In both federal and state courts, there are trial courts where cases are initially filed and are litigated before a judge or a jury, or appellate courts where cases that have been decided are reconsidered on appeal. Whatever you want to do, there is a clerkship for you, and depending on when you want to clerk, you can do it right after you graduate. You can do it a couple years into practice. But I'll conclude by saying that if you decide to go to law school, know that your legal education will open up so many opportunities for you to have a long, successful, and impactful career, no matter what you do.
Thank you. That was such a great overview of all the different things you can do within the legal profession. And I think an important thing also to remember is that whatever you pick or whatever you end up doing right out of law school, you can change that. If you end up starting working in government, you can go to a firm. If you start at a firm, you can go to a nonprofit. There's lots of ways that you can shift your career if after a few years you decide that you're not doing what you want to do. And I think another important thing to keep in mind is that there's a whole world called JD Advantage, which are careers where it's really useful to have a JD, but you're not actively practicing law in the way that you would in a number of the positions that Eric was discussing. So there really is just infinite open doors that come with a law degree. I think another question to kind of shift a little bit now that I know I struggled with a lot when I was applying to law schools and thinking through whether law school was right for me is how you even determine whether a law school is right for you. You know, you've done your research, you know which ones are going to be more affirming to LGBTQ plus people, you know your budget because you've looked through all the financial aspects of everything. Maybe you've reached out to folks, you've gone to campus. How do you make that decision? Does anybody have any insights here?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. But before I do that, I want to follow up on what Eric has talked about, because I think it's really important. And particularly if you're on this call right now listening to us, I hope you're inspired to think about how you can use the legal degree, your law degree, to impact our society and maintain our democracy in so many ways. And there's an intersection between what Eric described in terms of big law and public interest. And I want to give you some distinct examples of that right now. So the attorneys at A4 partnered with big law firms, right? Because we have co-counsel and some of the largest law firms in the country. But we sued Aetna Insurance Company. And if you're familiar with Aetna, one of the largest insurance providers in the entire country, that was denying gender-affirming care to trans women. We won, which means that Aetna now has to make that kind of care available to anyone who requires it, who's seeking it, if they're under that carrier. And that wouldn't have happened without the committed social justice lawyers at A4 partnering with some of the lawyers at some of the largest law firms in the country who are doing this work pro bono. That's one example. The second example is, if you've been following the kind of local landscape, there's a young 15-year-old trans athlete from West Virginia, Becky Jackson Pepper. She's 15. Her oral arguments were just heard at the Supreme Court a couple of months ago, and we're waiting for that decision. She is 15. Let me repeat that again. I had the chance to meet her recently, and she said, and quite sincerely, I just want to run track with my friends. I have been running track since I was 4. I ran with my mother after I was born and was able to walk. I just want to run track. And so to hear that kind of story and to know again that there was this intersection of the legal community, of the social justice nonprofit attorneys who represented her, as well as being assisted by the big law. So I think in some ways, you know, if you're thinking, well, I really want to do big law work, you can also have a commitment to do pro bono work on the side as well, and can give you that kind of like, well, if you're looking for the salary and the perks of big law, but also the opportunity to have the kind of moral justice and moral values that you're so inclined. So I think, you know, it's really important to kind of bring this to who we're talking about and who we're serving at the end of the day. But to try to go back to Mara's question, yeah, I think, and Bekah mentioned this early on, Law Hub, HUB, is the centralized point for candidates who are applying to law school. And when I think about LSAC and LSAT in particular, the test has been around for about 80 years. It really came into existence after World War II. And over the course of time, LSAC has evolved to provide a host of of services and programs to both the law school community, all 190 law schools in US and 18 law schools in Canada. And within Law Hub is the opportunity for you as a candidate to get reliable and resource information. And so that helps you both in terms of LSAT prep, and I think Bekah mentioned this too. There's a couple of free tests preps there, as well as data that permits you to compare schools, as well as career advice and just a learning resource library that's available to you after school. But picking a law school, and I know it's kind of like, I don't want to say purchasing a car and you say, well, kick the tires to do a test drive. You got to go visit the place. You know, you have to visit the law schools. And one place that you may start is with your local law schools, just to feel the temperature, what it means there. And then as you expand your orbit, what other law schools are you thinking about? You got to walk the halls. And listen, as a former admissions dean, I would want you to come to Admitted Students Day and those information sessions that we offer. But come on the off hours. Come when we're not doing the fancy rollout for you, so that you can really walk the halls and talk to prospective students, to law school students, particularly LGBTQ plus students who are there. You know, we'll surely give you the real deal about what the place is truly like and not what the brand or the gloss that happens behind the scenes. But you got to be happy. You got to be there for a couple of years. It's a huge investment, not only in terms of your resources and capital, but also your human capital. So pick wisely, because you will be there. And as Professor Carpenter said, you'll be a student in that building.
And I want to just piggyback on what Jay shared. Another great resource that LSAC provides are law school forums. And these are opportunities, they take place in several major metropolitan areas. It's an opportunity for candidates to come and engage with representatives from different law schools. Again, all law schools nationally are invited to attend. It's free for candidates to participate, and it's an opportunity, you know, sort of like your one-stop shop where you get to, you know, speak with someone from Rutgers and speak with someone from Berkeley and speak with someone from Penn State, all within a couple hours, you know, just go down the line in a giant ballroom. And LSAC also provides programming on workshops on how to prepare your application and how to navigate the forum. Really great resources that candidates can take advantage of. So again, I'll share a link to the forum information. And then I'll also say, I know we keep saying, you know, talk to the president of Outlaw, reach out to the dean of students. And you're maybe thinking, well, I want to, but how do I go about doing that? So let me just be really clear. The law school admissions office, right? Or at the law school, the admissions office, they are your liaison. Reach out, like each law school will have a generic admissions address, or maybe there's a director that you met at a forum that you can contact. Reach out and say, I'm interested in speaking with the president of Outlaw. How can I go about setting up a meeting? The admissions professionals want you to engage with the students. And so they'll help facilitate that. So I just want to be really clear. If you want to set up a visit, speak with a student, attend a class, whatever it is, just reach out to the admissions office and ask how to go about doing that. Each school may have a slightly different process. But we're, you know, I say we because I still very much identify as an admissions professional. We're here to help you.
You know, if I could just piggyback on what Bekah said too about the forums, because I'm grateful to the Bar Association here, the LGBTQ plus bar, because for the last 3 years now at Lavender Law, Rise Alliance, my outfit, has been co-partnering in establishing a law fair just for prospective law students. We'll be in Chicago this year. It's always held the day before the law fair, before Lavender Law starts. I have anywhere between 20 and 35 law schools show up. And although the forms may be overwhelming, and for some, because there'll be maybe 1,000 people, the Rise Alliance Bar Association Law Fair is a much smaller event. So if you're interested in that, Mara or myself would be happy to give you more information, but it'll happen this summer in July at Lavender Law in Chicago.
That's a
There's
great point. Thank you.
sorry.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
just real quick. That's a great point. Thank you, Jay. And to Bekah's point, also absolutely reach out to the admissions office. But the National LGBTQ plus bar also has a directory of all of our law school student group affiliates. And that's another great way to be able to get into contact with those students. But go ahead, Professor Carpenter.
Sure. I think something that's really important to think about when you're trying to decide among a group of potential law schools is this question: will I be able to afford to do the kind of work that I want to do? And again, this is something that's different when you're thinking, or for most people, it's a little bit different when you're thinking about law school than when you were thinking about undergrad. That's usually a different, for most people, a different group of considerations when you're in high school and you're thinking about like what college you want to go to. But for law school, it's really important to realize that the salaries for new lawyers varies wildly, right? I mean, big law pays ridiculous amount of money. Public interest salaries are, a fraction, honestly, of what you would make at big law. And most people's starting salaries are somewhere in the middle. And if you look at the average starting salary for, somebody who has a really great job in state government or something, it may seem like, oh, that's a really nice salary, right? Like that's, maybe that's like, more than what one of my parents makes, or it seems pretty good. But what you have to think about is what kind of debt load are you going to be carrying? Because the price of law school is very, very high. So if you are interested in going into one of the, more very highly paid parts of the profession, it may be worth it for you to go to the most expensive law school because you think that you're going to get the credentials and the access that you will need to get into big law and get one of those very highly paid positions, and that you're going to get a federal clerkship, and that those sort of access doors will open for you, and that it's okay to be shelling out the kind of money that you would need to be shelling out because the payback to you will be largely financial, so it's affordable for you, right? On the other hand, if you are interested in going into public interest law, as I did, I would be very careful about keeping your debt load as reasonable as you possibly can. Because I can't tell you the number of students that I saw as an employer of summer law students for years who were really very interested in going into public interest law full time, but simply couldn't afford to do it. It wasn't like, oh, they sold out. Like, that's a very unfair way to put it. They genuinely could not afford to pay their student loans and their rent and buy food on a public interest salary. So, if what you're trying to do is go into a career that is not as highly paid, you may be better off going to a school that's not as highly ranked as potentially another school that you got into, but that gave you a big scholarship or just costs a lot less. So those are some things to think about. Will I be able to afford, given what I want to do, the debt load that this school is going to make me incur?
Thank you. That was all so helpful, all that advice. And I can really speak to that being a good way to decide. That's all actually what I did when I was deciding where to go to law school. I went to the forums, I met representatives from those schools. Once I applied and found out what my financial packages would be from various law schools, I flew out to the ones that had the better deals for me, got a feeling of what it would be like to live in those places for 3 years, of what it would be like to build out a professional network in those places, what the campus was like, if I could walk to campus, if I was going to have a car, all of those kinds of considerations. And from there, I picked my law school, and I was very happy with my pick. So this is all fantastic advice, and thank you all so much for that. I think our last question today before we go to Q&A is kind of more just, I don't know, I hope a little bit more fun for folks, but I'm curious, we are living in pretty challenging times, I think, especially for the queer community. And I think the idea of engaging with the legal profession and law school can be a little bit intimidating during these times that we're in for the folks who might be on this call. So I'm curious if you all could share, and I think, Jay, you shared some beautiful examples of this already. You're welcome to chime in with more, though, on how a law degree, empowers someone to make a difference. For the lawyers on the call, how has your degree been kind of a guiding light during these times? Has it been meaningful to you? What is it like to be a lawyer in the world right now? I'm happy to jump in with an example first if that's easier to get us going. But my work is very meaningful to me right now. I don't actively practice law in the way that some other folks do, but I use my expertise about legal systems, the law, and the legal profession to be able to advocate for members of the LGBTQ plus community to both be able to access the legal profession, to be able to make the changes that they want to make, to be able to advance in their careers, to be able to navigate and understand the legal system, which for a long time was very harmful to our community. I find that very meaningful work. And while there are certain things in the world that I can't control right now, I know that I can make a difference, even if it's small, every day with my job. But I also really find a lot of meaning in the fact that I can help people in my community understand legal systems and understand legal jargon. So, when concerning executive orders come out, for example, I'm able to explain what that means to my peers and to my friends who are very worried all of a sudden that they're not going to have health care. I can help them navigate what that means and what news they should be following, what cases they should be following to understand the landscape for them. So that's one way that it's been very impactful and meaningful for me.
Yeah, just quickly, I could say, so, someone told me long ago, it's great to be on the outside of an institution and throw bricks at the windows. It's better to be on the inside. And even just looking at this panel here, right? I mean, this is when you think about the opportunities with the law degree, think about being in the legal education area, whether you're a senior administrator, whether you're a faculty member. I mean, you are affecting what happens at that law school and how future generations of not just queer students, but all students will be taught. And I can't think of a more impactful way to use the law degree.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think what you'll find is that there are a lot of individuals working within law schools, both on the staff and the faculty side, who are really committed to equity and access and to creating opportunities, particularly for folks from underrepresented communities in the law. And, just one example I'll share is I have been working the last couple of years to use my legal education to understand how to create more support and resources for undocumented law students as they enter our profession. And in doing that, I really had to study and learn the law in areas including tax and employment and immigration to be able to effectively advocate for the students that I was supporting.
And I, again, I'm so glad and I feel so privileged to work at a law school that gives me such hope for the future, right? Every orientation, when we welcome students in or even reading their applications, students are really passionate. Candidates are very passionate. They're driven, and then sitting through commencement, I feel so hopeful about the future. Sort of bookending the academic year, just feeling very joyful and inspired with the students entering, and then knowing that they've received this terrific education and are going out into the world to make a difference. To me, that is what it's all about. And just to sort of tie it back to what Jay mentioned, right? Like, this work has been valuable to me, even though I am now in what we might call a JD advantage job, because you don't need a law degree or to have passed the bar to be a law school administrator. But the law degree is so useful in that it helps you analyze and solve problems. And so, I've been working with Jay on the anti-racist book series, right? That Penn State Dickinson Law has a contract with UC Press, and we're publishing a series of 10 books talking about, how to deliver anti-racist legal education in various contexts. And one of them is admissions and financial aid. And so just being able to look at policies and sort of say, how can we make this better? How can we break down barriers? How can we use a design thinking framework and iterate and make this more accessible? That's really what it's all about. And that gives me great joy as well.
Yeah, I think if you're the kind of person who, when they see the world and feel upset by what they see, feels like they have to do something or they're going to lose their mind, law school is absolutely the right place for you. First of all, because you are training to be able to do something. I mean, what you're training to be able to do is insert yourself within incredibly powerful machinery, right? You can then manipulate that machinery to do a lot of different things. You can try to break it. You can try to change the way that it operates, right? You can try to adjust it so that the outputs are different, right? Only lawyers get the opportunity to walk into the machine and try to make changes within it. And that's an incredible privilege. So first of all, right, you actually get to do that. Second of all, you get to be around other people who feel the same way as you. And in a world where there's a lot of apathy and despair and online hand-wringing and doom scrolling, I think it's an incredibly positive place to be, right? Because you're with other people who want to do something, who want to make change, who want to take action. So one of the things that's been sanity saving for me, honestly, is going to work every day. I'm fortunate enough to be teaching a class called Introduction to Public Interest Lawyering, where I teach the next generation of public interest lawyers what this job is going to be about. We have guest speakers. I'm helping people write long papers about a particular topic that maybe will be the subject of a fellowship that they go out and do. I've got people who want to get immigrants out of detention. I've got people who want to get people housing, right? I'm inspired by them, and I hope that I'm teaching them something that's going to help them go out and make the change in the world that they want to see. Again, I think that, and I don't know if other people outside of law think that this is the most bananas thing that they've ever heard, but I'm never more hopeful and inspired on a day-to-day basis than when I'm at work, honestly.
Well, thank you all for sharing. It makes me want to go to law school again. But there really is, it's such a rewarding
career. That's insane.
It's fun. I mean, as Professor Carpenter was explaining, law school is such hard work. It really, really is. It's not like undergrad. It's going to be a totally new environment. A joke that always floated around my campus was 1L year is like learning a new language. It is a totally different experience, but you get to do such cool things and be around such cool people and then go out into the world and continue to do cool things around cool people. So it really is, it's incredibly rewarding. And thank you all for sharing your experiences. We don't have any questions in the Q&A on here. There's still a little time. If you do have a burning question and you want to ask it, you're welcome to do so. But some questions that we had from the registration form. One of them was, do I need to already know what kind of law I want to practice coming into law school? And I think you can tell from the shaking heads on the screen that you absolutely do not. It's totally fine to come in. In fact, I think it's almost sometimes better to come in with an open mind and to take different opportunities and see what really interests you and pursue that. And just in the interest of time, I'll go to another question, which is, what if law school isn't right for me right now? Is it okay to go later in life or to do law as a second career? And I'm curious if anybody has thoughts on that they'd like to share.
Personally, I think it's advantageous to take a couple of years off before you go to law school. You tend to develop a little bit of perspective. The people who have taken a little bit of time from just the grade grind, take it in stride a little bit better if they don't get the A, right? Everybody can't get the A. And if you're a person who's used to getting the A and you don't get it, and all of the achievement in your life has always been about getting the A, you can sometimes have a little bit of a lack of perspective about the fact that, like, yeah, you got a B, you're not going to die, it's going to be fine. Taking a little time off helps you develop that perspective and a little bit more confidence in who you are as a person. I know for me, working terrible jobs for just 2 years out of undergrad with my bachelor's in American Studies really motivated me to go back to law school and actually work really, really hard. So I think that can be eye-opening, sometimes in a terrible way, but also hopefully in a motivating way.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the great things about some of the resources that are out there that the law schools provide both on their website and LSAC, you can get a lot of demographic data about the law school. And one of those points might be the average age. And though it may not tell you specifically in terms of what percentage of students have coming directly from undergrad, you can also see an age range. And, it's not unusual to be at a law school and see someone who's 20 and not someone who's 65, right? I mean, that's also very true. But the demographics in terms of other data points that might be important to you are also on in that information. So it's a good place to get a sense of what's that law school like and maybe compare it to the other law school before you even go visit.
Thank you. Those are great resources. And I think that will wrap us up for today. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for being here. You provided such great insights that I'm sure were really helpful to the folks listening in. And thank you to all of the attendees today. As I've mentioned, I'll follow up with an email with a lot of the resources that we've discussed today. I think that our chat feature is turned off, unfortunately. So all of the great links that folks were sharing are just coming to me, but I will include those all in an email, so don't worry about it. And I also just want to, again, encourage everybody attending to join the bar. Even if you're not sure if you want to go to law school, we have a membership level for prospective law students. You're always welcome to write to me. If the $40 membership fee is not feasible for you right now, just shoot me an email and we'll talk about it. But that really is the best way to stay in touch with the LGBTQ plus bar and the LGBTQ plus legal community. As I said, we're going to have a series this fall that's supporting prospective law students, helping you navigate some of these questions more in depth. And it's also really a great way to get a head start on your legal career. If you know that that's what you want to pursue, it's just not time yet. It's a great way to get involved, start building contacts. And of course, you are always welcome to reach out to me. It's quite literally my job to talk to law students and prospective law students. So you're not bugging me. You can even just go ahead and reply to the email that I'm going to send you with any questions that you might have, or just to say hi. I'm always up for an informational coffee too, if that would interest you. So thank you again to our panel. Thank you again to our attendees, and good luck to all of you with your potential future careers in law. I hope to see you soon at a Lavender Law Conference in the future. Have a great rest of your day.